Okay, so we use the word seduction on this channel quite a lot, and we use it probably in a broader sense than you used to. We don't just mean sexual attraction by it, but it does include that as well. It means being charming, being appealing, drawing people to you, and also giving them good experiences. There are many ways you can go about doing this depending on your personality, but these are 3 mindsets we think are very good. Okay, so you come up with this idea for a video based on a few things that you've observed in your life recently. You told me a story about, I think you call it, giving credit to other people.
So recently, when I was at my brother's wedding, I had this happen to me and I caught it on camera, which is what made me think of doing this video in the first place, giving credit to other people. So it happened to me. My sister was in charge of a lot of things for this wedding, and during the ceremony, she was videoing and in charge of the music. She assigned me. She came up with the music. She figured out the times that everything needed to be played. The only thing I needed to do was to hit the button on the songs to play it at the right time, which she'd given me the exact times to do. So I was very nervous about the whole thing because I didn't want to let everyone down. After the service, I got a snap of Carrie Lynn and I, which I'm going to show you guys right here.
You give a shout out to everyone that basically carried the whole wedding. I wrote my instructions down. That's the key. You gave good instructions.
See, she didn't even need any hand signals. She just knew it. She just was on it, you know?
Oh, what a little cutie. So Carrie Lynn was in charge of so much during this entire wedding. And as you watch that Snapchat story, you can see she gives me credit for holding the entire wedding together, and my face lights up immediately. I feel so positive, even though I did the smallest thing.
That's exactly what I thought when looking at it. You like the cat that got the cream.
What a great, well, it's fun to be around people like that, but also what a great quality of a leader. She was, you know, in charge of everything. And she's my baby sister. Oh.
When someone gives you credit, whether you deserve it or don't deserve it, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's like you know that you're in like a collaborative environment rather than like a competitive or combative environment, which makes a huge difference. So this is the overarching mindset that I think is useful to adopt. Treat every interaction like it's a seduction. In practice, that means putting the spotlight onto the other person and away from yourself. It's a very simple but chronically underused and undervalued approach. Whenever I tell myself, okay, every conversation is an opportunity for a seduction, almost all of my relationships in my life get better instantly. The first thing it does is it allows you to focus on the other person. The lens through which you view things becomes very egoless or frictionless. You're not thinking about how what they're saying relates to you or affects you. You're just taking in what they're saying openly and freely. And people can tell when they're actually being listened to. They can see when genuine attention is being paid. There's nothing worse than when you're talking to someone and you can tell they're just counting down the seconds to the point where it's their turn to talk. That makes people feel rushed and unheard. When you start with a listening first approach, you very quickly get to see what's important to a person, both in general and specifically in that moment. That's simply extremely useful data. Dare I say that even when you're having small talk with someone, which I could never knowingly advocate, people are still telling you important things about themselves. Plus, it creates kind of a positive feedback loop. If someone speaks and feels listened to, they're more likely to speak again, which is not always a good thing. As Benjamin Disraeli said, former British Prime Minister, talk to a man about himself and he'll listen for hours. People obviously want to be seen and heard and known and understood. It's also about how you make a person feel. In a sense, it's kind of like letting them perform for you. I know that's a weird way of saying it, but by listening, you are making yourself the audience and giving them a platform. There's another great story about Benjamin Disraeli. It was told by a woman who spoke to both him and his biggest political rival, William Gladstone. Both men were prime ministers on multiple occasions. She said something to this effect: "When I sat next to William Gladstone, I was sure that he was the most intelligent man in England. But when I sat down and spoke to Disraeli, I felt like I was the most intelligent woman in England." The difference in both cases is that William Gladstone was out to make an impact or an impression. He was the one performing. But Disraeli put the spotlight onto her and let her take centre stage. Although she was undoubtedly impressed by both of them, Disraeli is the one that made her feel impressive too. So I would love for people watching to try this mindset and just see how it goes. Bear in mind, these mindsets won't work for everyone. When you're trying to be seductive or charming in this way, it by definition creates quite an imbalanced interaction and sometimes imbalanced relationships. If you are a very big and performative extroverted personality, you might simply find it difficult to keep your mouth shut. Whereas if you are more introverted, this could be a brilliant strategy to use.
The next point that I have that I really live by is choosing character above reputation. With coming from a big family like I do, relationships are always a moving thing. So sometimes in relationships, you're just going to offend the other person. You're going to do something that the other person doesn't understand or thinks is wrong and possibly is wrong. But if you continually choose character above reputation, I can afford for people to think that I'm an asshole or an idiot or whatever they want to think for the moment, because especially in really long-term relationships, I'm going to have 5, 10, 15, 20 years to prove I have character. So that gives me more freedom to be alive in relationships. I can do things that might be wrong without feeling like I need to cave to peer pressure. And also, when the time comes that big groups of people disapprove of you, then you'll be able to take the punishment a little bit better because you've chosen the punishment beforehand. Whereas if you choose reputation above character, if you ever want to change your tactic, then you're going to have to let everyone down. Whereas if you just do it up front, it brings you trust and character.
So many things that ran through my head while you were saying that, things I have actually never thought before, and a difference between you and I. So you're one of how many siblings again? I always forget the numbers. 7 or 8?
There's 8 of us. There's 7 siblings, so 8 kids.
You were talking there about how, because you're a big family, you know that these relationships are going to be basically lifelong. So you can afford to be the most authentic and real version of yourself. And you know they're going to be still around, which is fascinating. And it's not just 1 or 2 siblings, it's literally like a whole gang of people of different ages. That kind of gives you freedom to test how authentic you can be. And obviously with siblings, they're going to be there for you no matter what, you know. But I'm an only child. So whenever I met people of my own age, peers, it would always be a bit more of a negotiation, so to speak, where, you know, do they like me? I don't want to offend them, that kind of thing. So I've just realised there's such a huge gulf between the way someone with lots of siblings will approach the world versus an only child. That's just never occurred to me before.
If people are in my life long term, I want them to be able to trust that I will do what I think is right, that I will stand even when things are hard for what I believe, because then that way they can trust me.
That makes sense. And especially when you're behind the scenes with someone and you know that they, let's say, took a public hit. I mean, public could just be with a friendship group. You know that they decided to make a principled stand, and you know they did that. The respect you have for someone increases so much, and also with reputation as well. It can be like a house of cards that falls apart really easily at the moment that the external world is against you. You start to crumble because you're seeking validation from that the whole time. Yeah, it's a very dangerous way to live, because the moment you get any kind of resistance, it's like some kind of fighter that's undefeated. The moment they have a loss, they can kind of crumble sometimes mentally. That's happened quite a few times. So yeah, it's a nice thing to get out of the way, definitely. I agree. And it's a very seductive trait. And also, although you're choosing character over reputation in a sense, it becomes self-fulfilling because that becomes your reputation over time. It's almost like choosing character over reputation in the short term would be like the more detailed way to explain it, because usually character wins in the end. It becomes reputation. So we love the topic of seduction on this channel, and we'll revisit it many times.